The Last Harvest of Blackwood Farm. My name is Eleanor Vance. For all my life, I was the librarian of Blackwood Hollow. A quiet profession for a quiet spinster, or so they thought. My family, the Vances, have lived in the hollow since the first stone was laid in the churchyard. We were not farmers nor merchants. We were stewards. My great-grandfather called it the tending. I never understood what that meant, not truly, until it was my turn. You see, in Blackwood Hollow, we did not have a wolf problem. We had an arrangement. It was detailed in a ledger, kept in a lead-lined box beneath the floorboards of the library's oldest wing, written in the hand of my ancestor, Alastair Vance, in 1742. It listed the terms. The land was ours to farm, to build upon, to live on in peace. In return, on the night of the Hunter's moon, the first full moon after the autumn equinox, we provided the offering. It was never spelled out what the offering was, not in ink, but it was understood. A sheep, sometimes a calf, left in the old standing stones at the edge of the Blackwood. It was a tax, a dark tithe, and for generations, it was paid. The beasts would be found in the morning, gone, with only dark, matted fur and a scent of ozone and iron left behind. Life in the hollow was peaceful, strangely so. No crime, no predation. We were safe because we were provided for. I took over the ledger from my aunt in 1985. She was very stern. The date, Eleanor. Never forget the date. And never, ever go to the stones after sundown on that night. I was a modern woman. I had books on psychology, on folklore as metaphor. I thought it a quaint, macabre tradition, a superstition that kept the community orderly. Then came the Hunter's Moon of 2003. Old Man Brewer, whose land bordered the Blackwood, was a stubborn atheist. He called it primitivist nonsense. He refused to contribute his prize you. The village council argued. He stood his ground. I was tasked with speaking to him, using the authority of my ledger. He laughed in my face. "Let your forest devil starve," he said. The moon rose, fat and copper-red, bathing the hollow in a sickly light. The silence that fell was absolute. No owls, no foxes. Even the wind died. I sat in my library, the ledger open on my desk, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. I watched the clock. It was 1:17 a.m. when the screaming started. Not from the woods. From Brewer's farm. It wasn't humans screaming alone. It was the shrieking of animals, the splintering of wood, and beneath it all, a sound I can only describe as a ripping noise. And a howl. Not the clean, lonely cry of a wolf. This was a chorus. A jagged, discordant anthem of rage and glut. It echoed not just in the air, but in the stones of my house, in my teeth. By dawn, it was over. The silence returned, heavier than before. We found Brewer. What was left of him was in his own field. The police from the town called it a horrific, unprecedented animal attack. A rogue pack, they said, but they couldn't explain the footprints. Deep, bipedal impressions in the mud, leading from the tree line to the farmhouse and back. They were almost human, but the stride was twice as long, and the toes, they ended in points that dug deep into the earth. And the offering? It was taken. Not just Brewer's you. Everything. As punishment. I am the last Vance. There is no one to tend the ledger after me. The young have left the hollow. They think the old ways are stories. But I know the truth. The arrangement is breaking. The hunger in the Blackwood is no longer satisfied with sheep. It remembers the taste of defiance. It remembers the taste of man. I feel them watching from the tree line now, on every moonlit night. Not with the sly intelligence Carl described. With a cold, patient hunger. They are waiting for the last steward to die, for the ledger to close. And when it does, the hollow will no longer be a sanctuary. It will become a larder. I don't sleep during the full moon. I sit by my window, with the old ledger in my lap. I listen, and I write. I write it all down, so someone might know why a quiet English village will one day simply go silent. Some contracts are written in more than ink. They are written in blood and shadow, and they must be paid. A tradition of terror, upheld to keep a greater terror at bay. But what of those who carry the curse within them, who feel the moon's pull not as observers, but as its chosen vessels? Our next story comes from the other side of the ledger. Eleanor's story speaks of a bargain with the beast. But what of the beast itself? Is it merely a mindless force of nature, or does a consciousness, a terrible awareness, linger within the form? The lucid howl. My name is Dr. Alastair Finch. I was a research neurologist at Whitaker Institute. My life was the study of the brain, the mapping of consciousness onto biology. I believed the self was a symphony of electrical impulses and chemical reactions, nothing more. I was wrong. I am a lycanthrope. I do not say werewolf. That is a storybook word. I am describing a medical, a spiritual reality. It began not with a bite, but an inheritance. A familial tremor, misdiagnosed for generations. Parkinson's, they said, but it only flared with the lunar cycle. My grandfather knew. He warned me in vague, fearful terms before he died. The moon sings in our blood, Alastair. Don't listen to the words. I dismissed it as dementia. The first full transformation occurred 2 years ago. I will not describe the pain. That is biological. It is the clarity that haunts me. The change, it does not erase you. It focuses you, like a lens grinding all your light into a single, scorching beam. My human fears, my anxieties, my petty angers, they didn't vanish. They became pure, distilled instinct. The anxiety about a grant deadline became a hypervigilant paranoia, sensing the heartbeat of a deer a mile away. The anger at a disrespectful colleague became a cold, calculated fury that mapped every escape route from my own home. I was trapped inside, a passenger in a body of wire-taut muscle and bone that moved with a grace my human self could never comprehend. I could smell the history of the forest, the fear of last night's rabbit, the slow, patient malice of the owl in the pine. And I could think. Oh God, I could think. But my thoughts were not in words. They were in sensations, in urges, in a geometric understanding of pursuit and violence. That first night, I killed a stag. I remember the heat of its life flooding my mouth, the crack of its spine between my jaws. And I remember the profound, soul-crushing satisfaction of it. My human mind, screaming somewhere far away, was horrified. But the beast was fulfilled. It was not mindless. It was purpose incarnate. The true horror came after. The change back, waking naked in the dew, covered in dried blood and filth, with the memories intact, not as a dream, but as crystal clear recall. The taste, the feeling of power, the joy. My human conscience recoiled, weeping, but a part of me hungered for it again. That is the curse they never tell you about. It's not the loss of control. It's the sharing of control. It's the beast using your own memories, your intelligence, to become a better predator. And it's you, the man, beginning to crave the beast's terrible freedom. I tried to study it. I set up cameras, took my own blood samples during the prodromal phase. The data was impossible. Cortisol levels spiked, then plummeted. New neural pathways fired into existence and faded by dawn. It was as if my biology was a temporary scaffold for something else, something that borrowed my form and my mind for a night. I am writing this now in a secure facility of my own design, as the moon waxes full outside. The steel door is 6 inches thick. The restraints are industrial. I have fail-safes. But as the ache begins in my bones, as the shadows in the room grow sharper and more full of scent, I feel its mind stirring within mine. It is not a separate entity. It is me. The me that loves my wife is the same me that will, in a few hours, catch her scent on the air and recognize it as mate and territory and prey all at once. The part of me that is writing this rational warning is already planning how to bypass the locks. The beast is not an animal. It is a facet of the soul given flesh and tooth. It is the ID, unleashed and empowered. And it remembers everything. So, if you are reading this, and you feel an unnatural pull to the moon, if the smell of raw meat makes your mouth water in a way that frightens you, run. Not from the woods. Run from yourself. Because you can't outrun what's already inside. You can only lock it away and pray the door holds. I have to go now. The moon is rising. And I am so very hungry. A consciousness divided, a war within a single skin. But sometimes, the threat is not internal, nor is it bound to a family or a pact. Sometimes, it is a force of nature that chooses to wear a wolf's shape, an elemental hunger that descends from places older than myth. Dr. Finch's account forces us to confront the monster within. But what of the monsters that are utterly, profoundly outside? Beings not of cursed blood or broken bargains, but of a different reality entirely? Our next story takes us to a place where the geography itself is wrong, and what emerges from it defies even the understanding of a lycanthrope. The Things from the Gash. I'm Maya Kincaid. I survey remote terrain for a mining consortium. My world is rock strata, seismic data, mineral signatures. I believe in what my instruments tell me. At least, I did, until we went to Site Gamma, a potential rare earth deposit in the Mackenzie Mountains. The location was anomalous. The locals, what few there were, had a name for the valley: Angioch's Maw, the Devil's Mouth. They wouldn't go near it. Our first clue was the magnetic readings. They gyrated wildly without cause. Compasses spun. The air had a static charge that made the hair on your arms stand up. And then there was the gash. It wasn't a canyon or a fissure. It was a sheer, black seam in the granite, maybe 60 feet long and only 10 wide. It looked less like a geological feature and more like a tear. The rock around its lip was smooth, almost glassy, as if heated to an impossible temperature and cooled instantly. No lichen grew within 50 feet of it. No sound echoed from its depth. It swallowed noise, light, everything. We set up camp a half-mile away. The first night, we heard the wolves. Or, we thought they were wolves. The howls were off. The harmonics were wrong, layered with a sub-bass vibration you felt in your sternum. Our lead tracker, a Dean man named Joe, went pale. "Those are not wolves," he said quietly. "Those are the things that come from the hole when the moon is black." He left at first light and never came back. 2 nights later, under a new moon so dark the sky was a spill of ink, we saw them. I was on radio watch. I saw a shimmer at the tree line near the gash. Not a light, a distortion like a mirage. Then it resolved into a shape. It was wolf-like in silhouette, but its outline shimmered, as if it wasn't entirely solid. Its fur wasn't fur. It was a shifting, matted darkness that seemed to drink the starlight. And its eyes, they were not reflections. They were 2 pinpricks of a cold, phosphorescent green that cast their own sickly light. It wasn't alone. 3 more shapes emerged from the gash itself, flowing up the vertical rock face like oily smoke, before coalescing into that same wrong solid form on the ground. They moved with a jagged, stuttering gait. One moment they were there. The next they seemed to blur forward several yards without traversing the space in between. They didn't attack the camp. They investigated. One approached the perimeter. We had a motion sensor light. It triggered, flooding the creature in halogen brilliance. And it screamed. Not an animal sound. A metallic, screeching feedback howl that spiked through my teeth into my brain. The light didn't illuminate it. It made it worse. The creature's form seemed to fracture under the beam, revealing glimpses of something underneath. A tangle of bone-white limbs, a too long jaw lined with needle teeth that spiraled inward. It was like looking at a double-exposed photograph of a wolf and something insectal. It swiped at the light pole. The metal didn't bend. It pitted, corroding instantly as if splashed with acid. Then they all turned those glowing pinprick eyes toward our tents. I felt a pressure then, a psychic weight, a pure, alien malevolence that had nothing to do with hunger. This was curiosity of the most horrific kind. The curiosity of a child about to pull the wings off a fly. We ran. We abandoned everything. We drove for 16 hours straight, through terrain that should have torn the trucks apart. I looked back once, through the rear window. On a ridge, silhouetted against the fading night, one of them stood, watching us flee. It raised its head, and that sub-bass, distorted howl rolled across the tundra, through the engine noise, through the steel of the truck. The company sealed the records. Site Gamma is officially geologically unstable. But I know what I saw. Those weren't werewolves. They weren't animals at all. They were something that lives in the cracks of the world, in places where reality is thin. The gash isn't a hole in the ground. It's a wound, and something is bleeding through. Joe was right. They're not wolves. They're the things that wear wolves when they come visiting. And I think the black moon was just them peeking out. I dread what a full moon might bring from a place like that. Entities from a broken place, wearing wolfskin as a disguise. Our world has its own terrors, but some are visitors. And in our final story, we return to a more intimate horror. Not a visitor, not a curse, but a choice. The story of what happens when a man doesn't run from the beast, but invites it in. From ancient pacts to inner demons, from alien intruders to inherited doom, we have walked the spectrum of the lycanthropic nightmare. But there is one border we have not crossed, the line where horror becomes ambition, where the fear is not of the transformation, but of its end. Our final story is not of a victim, but of an aspirant, a warning of what lies on the other side of a willingly opened door. The parishioner of the Red Abbey. You may call me Thomas. I was a historian of medieval heresies. My obsession was with cults that worshipped the feral, the untamed god. My search led me to obscure references of the Lupin Creed, a secretive sect said to have operated in the Carpathian foothills. Their text, the Canticle of the Unleashed Soul, was considered a myth. I found it in a forgotten sub-basement of a Budapest archive, wrapped in what I swear was wolfskin. The pages weren't paper. They were vellum, thin and tough, the ink a rusty brown that smelled, faintly, of old blood. It wasn't a spell book. It was a philosophy, a treatise on shedding the rotted garment of humanity to embrace the pure will of the beast. It spoke of the moon not as a trigger, but as a sacrament, of the hunt as prayer. It was mad. It was brilliant. And I was weak. My life was quiet, orderly, and utterly hollow. I wanted the power it promised, the absolute, unfettered realness. I followed the clues in the canticle to a ruin known locally as the Red Abbey, not for brick, but for a rumored history. I went not as a skeptic, but as a pilgrim. The abbey wasn't a building. It was a series of caves in a sheer cliff face, their entrances carved into archways by long-dead hands. The central cavern, there was an altar, a single, massive slab of jet-black stone, polished to a mirror finish by centuries of something. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone, earth, and that same coppery tang from the book. I performed the rite as described, not with a potion or a curse, but with an intense, days-long meditation, fasting, and recitation of the canticle's verses. I was trying to invite it, to prove my will was worthy. On the third night, the night of the full moon, the fever took me. It was not like Dr. Finch's description. There was no internal struggle. It was an unveiling. My bones didn't break. They rearranged. The pain was an ecstatic fire, burning away the fear, the doubt, the petty Thomas. I felt my senses dilate, the world exploding into a tapestry of scent and sound and thermal glow. I was powerful. I was free. I was holy. I remember the first hunt. A boar, strong and fierce. The chase was a ballet of instinct. The kill was a sacrament. I gave thanks to the moon with a mouthful of its still steaming heart. This, the canticle promised, was transcendence. But the canticle was a lie, or it was incomplete. It spoke of the becoming, not the being. The transformation is not permanent. You change back, and that is the true damnation. The human mind returns, but it is now housed in a body that remembers the purity of the beast. Your human senses are dull, gray, pathetic. Food has no taste. Music has no beauty. Human connection feels like a distant, tinny echo. You are a ghost in your own life. All you can think about, all you can crave, is the next moon, the next hunt, the next taste of that divine violence. And the beast, it learns. Each time you change, it gains more ground. It borrows your human cunning. My first changes were chaotic, glorious rampages. Now, the beast plans. Last month, I found myself, in that form, standing on the outskirts of a campground, watching the families around their fires. The beast didn't just see meat. It saw easy meat. It saw strategy. It used my knowledge of human patterns. And the part of me that was still Thomas was there, screaming silently, but also admiring the efficiency. I am not a man plagued by a monster. I am a monster who is periodically trapped in the prison of a man. The Red Abbey doesn't house a curse. It offers a promotion, from a thinking animal to a pure predator. And it is a one-way journey. There is no cure, because there is no disease. There is only the truth of tooth and claw, and the pathetic, shrinking memory of what you once were. Do not seek this. Do not romanticize it. You are not embracing your wild soul. You are committing psychic suicide. The beast that rises will wear your face, use your memories, and it will do so with a joy so absolute it will obliterate you. I write this now in a rare moment of clarity as the moon wanes. But I can already feel the pull. The altar stone in my mind is always there, waiting. I will go back to the Abbey soon. Not to fight it, to surrender completely. The last sacrament is the burning of the human will. I am almost ready. I, Thomas, historian of heresies, will become my own final chapter. And the prayer I will howl at the red moon will be one of gratitude. 5 stories. 5 paths into the same dark wood. The accidental witness, the bound steward, the self-aware prisoner, the unwilling gatekeeper, and the willing apostate. Each one a shattered mirror reflecting a different facet of the same impossible truth, that the line between man and monster is not a wall, but a whisper. It can be crossed by chance, by birth, by trespass, or by choice. These accounts defy our understanding of nature, of reality, of self. Yet, they all echo with the same chilling authenticity, the visceral detail, the psychological ruin, the unwavering insistence. This was real. Perhaps that is the most terrifying notion of all. Not that monsters exist, but that they wear so many faces. The beast in the barn, the ancient warden in the wood, the lucid horror within, the intruder from a broken place, and the devout predator who sold his soul for a taste of power. They are all out there, or in here. The maps have blank spaces for a reason. The old warnings were carved in stone for a purpose. Some lights, once seen, cannot be unseen. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. If you have a story of your own, a brush with the impossible, a shadow that didn't fit the shape of the world, we urge you to share it in the comments below. Let us be an archive for these whispers from the edge. Help others find these warnings. Like this video, subscribe to Nightbound Bloodline, and turn on notifications so you never miss when we delve into the darkness. You are not alone in the night, but you might not be alone in the woods either.